mic gain. Well, you know what it is? I close talk my mic and I leave the gain down, so you can hear when I take a breath. I don't think it's as bad on the air, but when you listen back on these recordings of my demodulated audio, which is like slamming into my receiver, you can totally hear every time I take a breath, and I'm very self-conscious about it now, Clark.
Oh no. There are some Sidebanders who they have discovered the way to make it clear, like they don't have to do one of these things when they're taking a pause to think, so that people don't think that they're unkeying. Oh no. They just have so much compression that in between everything they say, you hear their, like this going on. So they're always fully modulated. So it's sort of that asthmatic sound, which is also kind of brain dead, but they think it's great. Which is interesting, because they think it's great, and yet it sounds very brain dead. So it creates quite a contrast between what they think is amazing and what other people really think of it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm guilty of that on Sideband too, though, because it just works differently. I mean, you can usually be a little more effective, and it's like the norm. Like, on CB, it's normal to sound very distorted, and when you don't, everybody's like, yo, like, what's wrong with your radio? On Sideband, and they just run a crap ton of limiting compression, and even RF compression. I mean, RF compression, gosh, that's like the devil. That's Satan right there. But it's the sound, so. And for the reasons like you said, on Slot Bucket, you can't just take a pause like that. Like, you all know I didn't unkey. I got a carrier in there. But yeah, you gotta do silly stuff to keep your average power up, and then that's compounded by the fact that, and I'm guilty of this, but people have peak reading watt meters that they run, and they stare at them when they talk. So, look, I just got a big uptick. Look at that. Oh, it looks so good.
This is also a sign of ignorance. I know that now, again, people are going to go run to HRO and burn it down and steal amplifiers because they're upset. Well, it's okay if you're upset, but it's very ignorant to be doing stuff like that, because there is literally too little compression where you don't have enough average modulation, and there is also too high an average modulation. And the reason why I say that is because the people who are ignorant, they just don't know any better, have peak reading watt meters, and they feel that the more it quivers nervously at maximum output power, the better. But the reality is that only works if you're being received by a receiver with a meter on it. And it doesn't matter what you say. You can sit there and do blah, 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 whatever, as long as that meter just quivers there at maximum power. But the reality is that you're not transmitting to do that. You're transmitting to be heard, like what you're saying needs to be heard. And the brain uses changes in amplitude to help decipher what's being said. So, for example, between words, like your brain is listening for waveforms. It knows the word so and it knows and all that, but in part of that, it is expecting there to be a drop in volume, and that drop in volume is the cue that tells your brain next word, next word, next word. If you eliminate all that, if you make it just one continuous bar of 100% modulation, your brain is denied the audible cues that it relies on to determine which words are where the word breaks are, because then it's just one long noise that runs on. People don't think about it from a biological standpoint. So there you go, folks. If you just want to look good on your meter and be ignorant, that's great. Do it. Makes that tingle run up and down your leg. Good for you. Glad you're happy. But if you really want to be understood, you need to start considering what you sound like to the person who you're communicating with. And the fact that they have, I am assuming, a brain, and they use, I'm assuming, ears. And if they're using ears and a brain to listen to what you're saying and you actually want to be understood, you can't do the asthmatic compression thing because it erodes your message. Get it? Good. Anyone BCG?
Clark, that's brutal. But on point. I mean, you want to sound human, right? You want to sound like you do when you're talking to somebody. And for the most part, and I'm not saying that there aren't really, really good single sideband, good sounding single sideband guys out there doing, some guys do the ESSB and they have it dialed in. It sounds almost like AM, but the majority of it, like, CQ contest, blah, 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 your 5 and 9 QSL, Cures Ed, that stuff does not sound human. None of those guys sound the way they do in a room talking to somebody. And I hate to bring it up again, but if you're going to promote ham radio to somebody who's not used to any of that stuff, you want to try to sound as human as possible, some good fidelity, somewhat close to the way you would sound in a room talking to somebody at a normal voice cadence, which, you're able to do very nicely on AM, and for the reasons that you stated, not so much with the single sideband mode, because you're constantly trying to keep your average power up. It all ties in and comes back to the fact that the easiest way to promote ham radio is probably with relaxed AM stuff, No cue codes, no goofiness, no high fine business, just people having a normal conversation, sounding like normal people with a normal voice cadence, and it's relatable. Ham radio, and this is a niche of ham radio. This isn't mainstream ham radio. So, I don't know. Maybe it should be. Just another thought out there in the universe. W2BTK.